Great, thank you. My name's Steven. I work for 6waves. Okay. So I know a lot of you are probably pretty tired or hungover or maybe still drunk, so I'll make this really quick. If I'm speaking too quickly for you guys or for the interpreter, let me know. I can slow down. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about global domination for your social and mobile games. This is a topic which I did not create, so I'm going to do my best with it. Very quick summary of today's agenda, just a very quick introduction to 6waves. Because we are at Sociality Rocks, I'm going to focus very much on social opportunities. There were a lot of people yesterday and today speaking about mobile, and I think they're a little bit more experienced in that area, so I'll focus on social today. And also I'll speak very much about Asia, where 6waves is headquartered. And in particular Japan and China, where we've begun to publish some of our social games very successfully. So I'll talk about some of our experiences there. And then finally I'll share some insights from our publishing perspective. And then we'll wrap it up and then you guys can throw questions at me. All right, so first about 6waves. We are the largest independent publisher of games on Facebook. Basically, our goal is to bring users to games all over the world and bring games to our partners' games to users. So very, very quickly, we were founded in 2008. We've been publishing social games on Facebook for a long time. So at that time, Facebook was very, very spammy, very viral. And Facebook started in North America. Everyone was very, very focused on capturing the English-speaking market. 6waves is very, very focused on the rest of the world. So we were able to grow very quickly by focusing on non-English speaking territories and non-English speaking users. So in Asia, in Europe, particularly here in Eastern Europe as well. So we were able to grow a pretty good user base. We've launched over 130 social games. We have 5 global teams, and we launch on social and now mobile platforms as well. Okay, so what we do is we partner with developers to provide all the services necessary to make their games successful. So everything from localization to analytics, product advisory to help users engage in the game, cross-promotion within our network, and then finally the most important thing that developers care about, growth and distribution on Facebook. So Facebook marketing, promotion, driving traffic to games. And we published, we first started on Facebook. We have since branched out into other networks where Facebook is not dominant, so Tencent in China, Mixi and Yahoo Mobile Get in Japan, and then also mobile with iOS and Android. All right, so our user base is pretty evenly spread geographically throughout the world. So 30% in North America, where Facebook kind of started, and English-speaking countries, 30% in Europe, and then finally 30% in Asia and kind of the rest of the world. So a pretty global base. Our developers are also very evenly spread geographically throughout the world as well. So we partner with very small 1 to 2 person teams, independent developers, but also large international brands and companies like Atari, BBC. In Eastern Europe in particular, a lot of our hit games have come from this region, from Ukraine, Russia. So Game Inside, PlayerX, Jimmy, a lot of the big developers that you've probably heard of or worked with before in the past. All right, so here's a snapshot of some of the games that we've pushed to over 1 million users on Facebook. Probably the most famous ones you've heard of would be Mystery Manor from Game Insight, Astral Garden by Red Spell, Township by PlayerX, Airport City, Kingdoms of Camelot by Kabam, Mall World. These are all games which we were helped to grow to well over 1 million user level. So our typical user acquisition strategy, how do we drive traffic to games? Basically, we soft launch the game in our network, so we cross-sell users from other existing players and games. We show them games which we think that they're likely to click through and monetize, hopefully. And then we study the statistics. So if the statistics look good, the game is stable, then we go ahead and turn on the paid user acquisition. So we launch Facebook marketing campaigns. We rely on the developer to help to improve the virality of games, and we're able to grow. So this is kind of the distribution of how games grow in our network. So green is kind of the viral, which takes over as we add more marketing spend to the game. So this is kind of like typical growth chart of some of our more successful games. So Township by PlayerX, as I mentioned, Astral Garden. So as you can see, like we start very, very slowly through kind of cross-promotion, and then we turn on the paid marketing, and then everything jumps up, and then that's supplemented by viral features. All right, so global social opportunities. So where we see the opportunities in social, basically new genres on Facebook. So everyone's kind of seen farming games and city building games. We think there's a lot of room for new game genres and improved monetization for these games on Facebook. So converting users from non-paying users to paid users, looking for new ways to monetize from games. So showing ads, offers. There's really cool ad stuff or video stuff that's coming out in the market, which is helping developers to monetize even more than they are already. Another source of growth will be social games off of Facebook. So in particular, other social networks, other platforms. That includes mobile, console, etc., web games. So overall, this is not from us. This is from Lazard Capital Markets. They expect worldwide social game market to grow 30%. So if you look at sort of the $50 billion game industry this year, social makes up a pretty good chunk of that, and most of the growth in the gaming industry is heavily focused on social and mobile. So good news, we're in the right space. It's going to continue to grow. We're very, very bullish on social. All right, so how do we reach social gamers? First and foremost, the most interesting platform in my opinion is clearly Facebook. Over 900 million users and growing every day. This is a map of kind of growing social networks. You can see it started off in 2009 with Blue. Facebook has slowly overtaken some of the local regional social networks, such as StudiVZ in Germany, Orkut in Brazil, and now we're at the point where Facebook is pretty dominant. The only areas where you don't see all blue on the map is actually Asia. But surprisingly, if you look at users of Facebook by continent, the biggest population of Facebook users is coming from Asia, which is really strange. So it doesn't really make any sense, but I'll get into it in 1 second. So the most users now in Asia, on Facebook, are in Asia, 251 million. If you look at the share by continent, 3/4 of the world Facebook population is not in North America. So it's not about English-speaking territories anymore, it's about global, right? So you really have to focus on making your game global in order to be truly successful. A really, really interesting stat here is if you look at Facebook penetration, even though Asia has the highest number of Facebook users, it's only got 6% penetration, so there's still a huge amount of room to grow. And that's why at 6waves, we're very, very focused on Asia and the growth potential in Asia. So when you're looking at Asia, more than half of the world's population, over 1 billion internet users, 6% Facebook penetration. So that to me tells me huge opportunities in looking not only on Facebook, but other social platforms in Asia. All right, so when we're thinking about Asian countries and markets where we want to grow and monetize our game, the two that we are very focused on, one is Japan, which I've highlighted here, and the other one is China. And those, if you look at the breakdown of Asian Facebook users, they're actually quite low on the chart, very low penetration. Facebook has just overtaken Mixi as the largest social network in Japan, which is good news for us. But in China, Facebook continues to be blocked. That's an issue, and that may not change anytime soon, but there's still plenty of room to grow in China on other platforms, which I'll talk about in 1 second. Okay, so first of all, Japan. Why are we interested in Japan? So as game players, as game developers, you all know that all the games that we kind of grew up playing and loving, most of them came from Japan. Japan is basically a gaming society, so playing games is ingrained in their culture and everything that they do. Fast, reliable technology infrastructure, mobile-centric country, so people in Japan have been using their phones to kind of purchase and look up things for well over a decade. The things that we've been doing on smartphones for the last few years, they've been doing for ages. They're very, very, that behavior is very, very ingrained in their culture and what they do. Obviously a pretty big user base. What's very, very interesting to developers that we partner with is the statistics. So ARPU could be 5 to 10 times that of other countries. And this is actually from our own internal experience as well. And the retention rate is much, much higher too. So we've launched 11 games. What we've seen in Japan is that Japanese users are very, very crazy about pretty much everything, but they're especially crazy about games that they love. So if they love the game, they're going to play it as much as they can, and you're going to see that in higher ARPU and higher retention rates. So some of the leading Japanese gaming companies, you heard someone from Greedy yesterday, DNA, Handgame, Nixie, they are now actually they've mastered monetization in Japan, right? And they're now bringing some of those to the Western markets, particularly in mobile as well. So the challenges in Japan, localization, it's not really, I'll get into it in 1 second. Developer support is an issue, regulatory issues, user consumption, customer service, and the platform itself. So I'll go through these one by one very, very quickly. So first of all, localization. It's very, very easy to use Google Translate, and I love it. I use it all the time when I'm on Facebook when I don't know what other people are posting about. But for gaming, it's not going to do. So what we do at 6waves is actually get into localizing the game for Japanese culture and Japanese taste. And somebody was speaking about this yesterday as well. So this is an example of a game that we localized for Japanese market, Simply Hospital. So as you can see, the look and feel of the characters has been tailored more for Japanese taste. Ravenwood Fair, the characters are much more cutesy, more 2D. This is just, it appeals more to them and they respond well. It's worked very well for us. Here's another example of how we localize characters for Japanese markets. So these characters are much more anime focused, so bigger eyes, smaller mouth, a little bit more accessories and things like that, because Japanese kind of audience responds well to that. So these are the kinds of examples of how you're not just doing a simple text translation, you're actually going into detail in the game and localizing it for local Japanese consumers. All right, so developer support issues. So basically, these social networks are open social. Supposedly they are open. There's APIs and sort of guidelines out there, but they're not always in English. They're not updated very often. If you're a developer looking to get into the Japanese market, it's pretty much a huge challenge. So what we do as a publisher is we partner, we help developers navigate this process. So all the APIs, all the integration, we help them through the submission process. It's pretty challenging, and the platforms are quite demanding, but we've done it many times now, so we've got it down to a pretty much a science. So regulatory issues. Japan's platforms are very strict, as I just mentioned. So any virtual currency that people are paying for in the game has to be expired within 180 days. That's just the law in Japan. So in some ways it's good because it forces people to consume these virtual items, but you have to keep that in mind as a developer and as a publisher and make sure that you're not violating the law, basically. And also there's a lot of regulations. You may have read a month or two ago about how they banned a certain mechanic of gacha, which is kind of like a lucky draw kind of mechanism. So there's a lot of things that you have to be careful of in Japan, and these are things that as a developer, wherever you may be located, you may not know, and it's very important to have guidance in this market. All right, so I talked about Japanese consumer behavior. So they're really, really crazy about games that they like, and consequently they consume these games very quickly. So for Ravenwood Fair, they burn through the virtual items within 2 days of launch. So content is something that you have to keep in mind. If you don't have a lot of content on your game, it's probably not a good idea to go to Japan just yet, because chances are they'll be finished with the game and then they'll want more. And if you can't support that demand, then the users will go elsewhere. So they consume the game, the content very, very quickly. It's good because it's higher ARPU and they're playing the game much more. But again, you have to plan accordingly, right? So what we normally do for games that we're publishing on Facebook, we like to roll it out on Facebook first. If a game is successful on Facebook and the developer is interested and they have the resources to manage another platform, then we can help them move to Japan. But usually we wouldn't encourage developers just to go straight to Japan, because there's no telling how quickly they can finish the game. All right, customer support. So because they're very, very crazy about the game, they're also highly sensitive to bugs in the game. You have to be very, very diligent about keeping up with CS. So if you're not responding to bugs with bug fixes and user complaints, users will not like that, right? They'll go elsewhere, they'll go to other games. There's plenty of games out there. If you respond very well to user feedback and to bugs and reports and things like that, they will stay loyal, they'll stay in the game. It's super important that you take care of that. So The most successful cases of us publishing games in Japan are those cases where developers are very, very on board, they're responsive, they reply and fix bugs as quickly as possible. Finally, the other big headache in Japan is actually the platform itself. So Yahoo Mobile Get, for example, is a little bit different from Facebook in that there's no Facebook ads. So you can't run marketing campaigns in the same way that you can on Facebook just to drive users to your game. So the only way that you can do it is by having banners for the game. So there's a limited number of banners on the site to promote games. That's the only way to promote games. So because there's limited inventory, the banners are actually bid for by a lottery system. And there's some banners, such as the one right at the top of the page, you can't pay for. Those can only be acquired through relationships, through game performance, through showing the platform that you're a serious game company about taking care of their users. So I should mention Yahoo Mobile Get is strictly a gaming platform only, so it's a little bit different than like a portal. So it's a joint venture between Yahoo Japan and DNA. So it's got around 10 million users, and all of these users are purely there to play games. So this is an example of something that we've done recently with Mystery Manor, which is a game insight game. It's actually now the #1 game on Yahoo Mobile Get. When users log into Mobile Get, there's a pop-up encouraging them to play the game. This is not for sale. This is also not for sale. So if you have the right partner in place, they can help to really drive traffic to the game. It gives you a much better chance of success than if you do it yourself. It's just not possible to get exposure unless you're talking to the platforms. You also need local infrastructure, so you need a local company. You have to be able to collect, payments from the platform. So, and in running these kind of marketing promotions, you have to stay in sync with the platform. So the platform will say, we're thinking about promoting your game. Please give us creatives, give us visuals, and tell us about the events and the campaigns that you're doing so that we can stay in sync. So it's a very, very fluid process. So a developer needs to be very flexible. They need to be able to work with the publisher as well as with the platform. So that's Japan. I'm going to talk about China for a few minutes. So the biggest platform in China is called Qzone in terms of social networks. So we talked about 251 million Facebook users in Asia. Qzone has over twice that amount, so pretty substantial. A very, very huge market, but it's also very complicated. So this is the social media landscape in China. It's just a complete mess. These are all the different portals, services, sites out there for social media. So you've got social networks, you've got blogs, you've got like equivalent of Twitter, microblogging services. So it's just a challenge for anybody that wants to break into the market. It is a huge market though, 800 million social network users. Most of them spend their time online on social networks. The ARPU compared to Japan is a little bit lower, but the market is much, much bigger. So there are a couple of major networks out there, which I've listed here. I'll talk primarily about the largest ones here. So the biggest one by far is Qzone, which is by Tencent. Tencent also has Weibo, which is kind of like Twitter. So there's a Tencent Weibo, a Sina Weibo. So if you add these two together, Tencent pretty much is the dominant player in China. So we're working very closely with them. This is just a snapshot of what Tencent has achieved. This is from their company report. I won't get into the details, but tons of apps, tons of games out there. They take a lot of rev share, but they also pay out a lot of rev share to developers as well. All right, so the challenges with China. There's some similar challenges to what I talked about in Japan, but there's some important differences. First of all, localization, developer support, again, I talked about earlier, regulatory issues, user behavior, customer service, and the platform itself. I'll go through these very, very quickly. So localization, so Tencent itself has several different platforms. One of the things that they do very well is they have a VIP service for gamers. So if you're a gamer and you pay X amount per year or per month, we'll give you exclusive access to virtual items that you can't get if you're not a VIP. You get to try games first before other players. This is a pretty cool mechanic that other platforms, I think, could benefit from. But the thing is, it requires a developer to be on board and help to integrate these things for their VIP. So they do have to give out some virtual currency and virtual items, but it pays off in terms of keeping the players loyal and keeping them engaged in the game. Okay, so they also integrate Weibo very, very well. I talked about Weibo before. It's kind of like the equivalent of Twitter. So there's a lot that you can do within social games to integrate with Weibo. You can tell people to kind of tweet about your achievements. You can share sort of the cities or fairs that you built. In this case, it's a Ravenwood Fair. So if you share your Ravenwood Fair by tweeting it on Weibo, you'll be rewarded with virtual currency. That helps improve the virality of the game, so your friends and followers will see this and they'll want to play the game as well. All right, so sharing. Also, the other thing which Tencent has is QQ, which is like the equivalent of instant messaging service. So that has hundreds of millions of users as well. That is also integrated into social games. So Tencent's very clever. They have all of their social channels, the instant messaging, the Twitter, the social media, it's all integrated within the game. So developers have to do a little bit of extra work, but it allows users to be rewarded for sharing more about the game, and that improves the virality of the game as well. All right, so localization. Here's an example of Sim Social. I'm sure some of you guys have played this on Facebook. They've done a really good job in this case. If you look at some of the items that you can decorate your house with, they're actually like the furniture itself is like Chinese themed furniture. So it's something that users in China respond well to. And so when you're thinking about localization from that kind of item level, the chances of success are much greater. So EA has done really well with this. I mean, Zynga has not done well in China because they're more likely to do just straight localization jobs and very simple graphics changes. And Chinese users can kind of smell that. Like if the game is not really tailored for them, they will just perceive it as, okay, this is a foreign company trying to bring their game and make me pay. I'd rather play a Chinese game. So if you're not really thinking true localization to this level of detail, it really hurts the chances of success for your game in China. All right, so developer support. This is kind of a map of the integration process in Tencent. It's kind of a mess. So there are documentation available. Again, same thing with Japan. They're not updated very frequently. They're changing viral channels all the time. So it really helps to have a good partner in place that has good relationship with Tencent and will understand how to get through this process. So a good local partner can ensure smooth integration, launch, and developer and customer support. So these are all things which I would highly recommend you do not try to do yourself. It's just really more trouble than it's worth, and it's good to have a partner that has the pull with Tencent and can help you through this process. All right, so China has a whole other separate bag of issues, regulatory-wise. So they're also very strict on online gaming. In terms of entertainment, media, gaming, they only release a certain number, I believe it's like less than 10 licenses per year. That's for movies, video games, and everything to foreign companies. So in order to launch any game in China, you need to incorporate a local company. And that's actually complicated. You also need to register the game with the government, different ministries. So really, it's a big hassle to even get started. So it's a lot easier to work with, again, with a local partner that has that infrastructure in place. They have a company set up, they have the process in place, they know all the regulations, and they follow the letter of the law so that there's no problems later on with the platform or the government. All right, so gamers, very, very unique. They need to register their account with their real name and ID. So the government has a special department which will go in and routinely check and make sure that your games are following their regulations. They also check to see that users under 18 are not playing games too much. So if you're under 18 and you're playing a game for more than 3 hours, they take away half of your virtual currency from the game. If you play for more than 5 hours, they take all of it, so you're done. You can't play the game anymore. All right, so they're quite strict about it. So we're trying to make sure that all of our games follow these regulations because there is a substantial gaming market, but it's usually going to be people older than 18. All right, so Chinese consumers, I talked a little bit about this before, but PvP is very, very important. So all games, even like a simulation game like Ravenwood Fair, we've incorporated PvP elements. And it sounds funny to say that, but it's true. It's just a psychological thing. They like comparing and seeing if they can beat other players. So if you have PvP elements and other features which Chinese users respond well to, they'll be loyal and they'll stay in the game. Gifting is also very, very important. So it's kind of a way for Chinese people to show, how they feel. So, this is something that somebody built for their girlfriend. In Chinese, it's basically just showing that he loves her, stuff like that. All right, so Another thing about the Chinese mentality, email support is just something that they don't have the patience for. So it's much more common to actually use instant messaging tools and things like that, where you can actually get to the developer or get to the CS person and get an answer right away. So when you're launching your game there, it's very important to have that CS infrastructure in place. And finally, the platform as well. So Tencent sounds really intimidating. They take a huge revenue share from every game. So they take 30% off the top. That's pretty normal. But then depending on how much revenue the game generates, there's a tiered revenue share structure on top of that. So the more revenue your game makes, the higher percentage they take. And it sounds very strange, but the most popular games on Tencent are making huge amounts of money just because there's so many players on the platform. All right, so the other thing is they have, even though it's an open platform, Tencent is very, very careful about the games that they launch on the platform. So all games must be approved. When you're looking at launching a game and soft launching a game on Tencent, they will come to you and say, okay, well this looks good, but we want you to change this feature, or we want you to tweak this. And it's kind of a suggestion, but it's more like you kind of have to do it. Because if you don't do it, they have the power to basically turn off the viral channels to the game and make sure that the game doesn't take off. If you kind of follow their suggestions, they'll do what they can to push the game, because they ultimately know what features and what kind of portions of the game will appeal to their user base. So it is, very much for the good of both parties, but the developer will have to understand and be flexible and say, all right, well, Tencent thinks I should do this, so I should probably think about doing that. So it's a balancing act. You can live without implementing all of their suggestions, but it's not recommended. It's always recommended to play ball with the platform so that they can help you as well. And if the game takes off, they will push in ways that you cannot, purchase. All right, so just some general insights about global domination. So first of all, the competitive landscape. I talked a little bit about this yesterday on the panel, but I actually believe that the playing field in gaming right now, in social and mobile gaming, is not fair. So there's a couple of challenges. Discovery is one. There's huge competition in the market. You need huge amounts of marketing budget to promote your game and get it in front of millions of users. If you have a huge budget, you may not have the expertise to actually do it. So there's millions, not millions, but literally hundreds of vendors out there that claim they can help with marketing for social and mobile. Some of these are better than others. Some of them can deliver. Some of them maybe not so much. So how do you navigate that? And then also the shorter and shorter life cycle of games, because there's so much content out there. There's so many new launches all the time. All right, so this is just an example. I pulled up my Facebook page, and for somebody that wants to find games on Facebook, this is the only spot that you can have it, right? App Center. You get some requests here from time to time, but it's really not that interesting. So they're trying really hard. I mean, I got this on my Facebook feed the other day, which I thought was cool. And so I think Facebook is definitely trying hard to turn on some more of these viral channels that used to exist. So that's good news for developers. How many people here have an iPhone and upgraded to iOS 5? Or iOS 6, sorry. Yeah, so iOS 6, this is the App Center. Most people that I know, they look at the top of the charts. This is the top of the charts right now. It's really not encouraging for developers. This basically says that you have to be either Apple or you have to have your game in the top 3 or top 3.5. And it's really not that encouraging, but again, they are trying, and I think they're getting a lot of feedback from developers and publishers about how to drive more effective app discovery. So one of the things which I do like about iOS 6 is that you can actually like a game, with Facebook baked into the OS, you can actually like a game. You don't even have to have the app installed. You can like it, and people on Facebook can actually see that you're promoting this game. So I think there's a lot of potential things that can happen with sort of the convergence between social and mobile. I think it's going to be a kind of a long process, but right now it's just a little bit unfair. If you're a small developer and you don't have a lot of access to budget and things that we're talking about, it's really challenging. All right, so the other thing which I believe strongly is that bigger does not necessarily mean better. So back in the day, everyone's talking about DAU, MAU. How many DAU, MAU do I have in my game? From our perspective at 6waves, that is very, very archaic, and it doesn't really matter so much anymore. Of course, traffic is important, but there's so many games out there. If you drive 10 million users to your game, and there's 5 other games out there just like that, how do you know they're going to stay in your game, right? So what's more important is making sure your game is profitable. So increased acquisition costs. There's so many competitors out there, and they've got huge budgets. It's really not economical to spend millions and millions of dollars to get millions of users into the game if it's not going to pay off, right? And most of these users that you're driving in are not going to pay. So what's more interesting from a publishing perspective is profitability. So rather than focus on driving millions of users, I'm going to focus on finding users that will actually pay. So high quality users. I'm going to target whales. I'm going to make sure that I take care of them, and I'm going to keep them playing in the game. And if they're tired of one game, I'm going to try to cross-promote them to a different game. So as a developer, it's kind of tough because you really, you want to be able to say that you have 1 million users of your game. It's kind of a badge of honor to have that, and it's cool. But it's okay not to have that as long as you have a user base which is loyal and that will pay. So marketing spend is a huge issue. And this is sort of a typical P&L for one of our successful games. I'm not going to say which one. So at the very beginning, we're taking a huge loss, but then after that, the game becomes profitable, right? So if you're a small-time, or small bootstrap developer, you just cannot afford to promote your game in such a way. So that's why it's important to have partners in place with marketing, budget marketing expertise. So focus on profitability and maximizing the revenue from your game. All right, so global domination, what's the next step? From my opinion, you have to find a partner. I think the days of kind of organic discovery and having a game become #1 by itself, I wouldn't say that it's over, but it's very, very challenging and very, very unlikely. The odds are not in your favor. There's millions of apps out there. But with the right partners in place, someone with experience, advice, and expertise that can share best practices with you, someone with the right relationships in place with the platform. So if you're looking at Asia, you're looking at Tencent or Yahoo Mobile, if you don't have those relationships in place, you're limiting the potential success of your game. So a partner has the right relationships in place and also right synergies. So do they have the right user base? Do they have social? Do they have mobile? What's the best fit for the type of game that you're trying to promote? All right, so if you manage to find a good partner, there's a lot of things that they can do to help your game. I shared some of these before, so maximizing the revenue. So this is an example from Mystery Manor. This was the payment page when the game was launched initially, and then this is what we did with it afterwards. So highlighting the best deals, featuring them very prominently, and making sure that they're visible above the fold of the page. Also giving away special items for the best deal. So that translates into huge savings and huge revenue for the developer. So another thing that we also do with developers, I'm using the Mystery Manor case just because it's been a runaway hit for us. Buy one, get X free. So if you're doing premium sales, that translates directly into positive revenues and it's sustainable. So this is data from one of these games that we're running these promotions for, and you can very clearly see that with the right partner in place that's recommending the right mechanics and the ways to optimize the game, it translates directly into positive revenue for the company and for the developer. All right, so this is kind of what we're all about at 6waves. We share our best practices with developers. It's a very collaborative process. We're not making promises that we cannot keep. Not every game is successful, but if you have the right partner in place and someone that's trustworthy, we're going to give it our best shot, and that's sort of how we feel about things with developers. All right, so just to sum it up, going global, I think the best way to do so is leverage the global reach of social networks. So Facebook, obviously you know about, but there are huge opportunities in Asia, so don't ignore Asia. Second thing, maximize the revenue potential of the game. So don't focus on your DAU, MAU, focus on the number of paying users, your pay rate, and how those users are paying. So know how to find those users and keep them in the game. And finally, find the right partners. So people that know how to localize the game properly, people that understand the local challenges, and can handle the localization, customer service, relationships, and pretty much all that stuff. So that's all I have. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Session was really fast and really informative.
Okay. Any questions?
About English.
Do I need a... Sorry.
сказать, что Google Translate не лучший способ локализации. Есть сервисы, Profitability, например, да, то есть, когда ты даешь тест местному пользователю, который в курсе, насколько адекватно для игровой индустрии использовать такие сервисы на вашем. То есть, насколько я знаю, вот в Японии, например, да, там не просто один язык, там язык официальный, язык женский, да, так, язык мужской, разделение, да, и насколько использование вот этих proofreading сервисов, оно адекватно в игровом плане.
Right. Very good question. So Japanese. Sorry. Hold on. Yeah, good question. So there are a couple of kind of systems in Japan, but the language itself is pretty much unified. So if you're looking at like social networks and how the language should be there, it's pretty standard. What we do is we have like a local team, and these are basically game players themselves. These are product people that play games and test games. So even if we have outsourced something to let's say a third-party vendor, we will QA that with local players that actually are Japanese and make sure that it's not just a simple translation job.
Thanks.
Sure. I don't think there's a different language for men and women. I think that would be really strange.
I mean, same phrases only for women.
Yes.
And same.
Okay. Yes. That's right.
Еще вопросы? Неужели не хочет захватить мир?
Yeah, I'm only in the seat for another 24 hours, so if you don't have questions today, you can find me tonight or later on in the week.
Я думаю, что 6waves одна из самых мощных экспертиз игровых в индустрии. Так что, I'm excited.